Hello everybody, we are back for another Animode review. We are going to be talking about Kuromukoro, which I have just finished season 1 for the second time. I watched it quite a long while ago, so everything was kind of a blank inside my head. Refreshed, I will be working on season 2 after this. And I gotta say that I am saddened, disappointed, because this anime, much like many others, had so much potential and it fell short in so many ways that are sort of typical for the anime genre, for these kinds of, I would have to say, like throwaway animes that just kind of pop up every once in a while. And to really dive deep into that, so we get into the basic story, which has so much premise. This young girl, Shirohane, her mother works for the UN. They work at this gigantic UN facility in Japan because many years ago they found what's known as the Black Relic, or for all intents and purposes, it is a giant robot that they found deep underground, and they built this facility all around, controlled by the United Nations because it was considered too much of an advancement for Japan to be the sole controller of this. Alongside that robot, they found this cube, this strange cube that they could never get to function. One day, the cube opened up and a man named Kenosuke came out, or at least you think he's a man, because as usual, one of my main issues, the Japanese have an obsession with using not only children but very young children as their main protagonists. A lot of the issues of many anime could be resolved simply by having their protagonists be 18 years old, but they have this obsession with them being in high school, and even then they really have this fixation with the ages of 14 to 15 years old for some reason I cannot grasp. And at the same time, they make these 15-year-old kids look nothing like a 15-year-old and also have the voices of like 35-year-old Japanese men. So it's very awkward, as usual. But the show kind of shows some interesting concepts behind this young man who ends up being supposedly a samurai from over 400 years ago, who has been awakened and kept in a sort of stasis in that cube this whole time because he was the rider, the controller of that giant robot. And as the series progresses, you would hope that this would have a lot of interesting context around it, because of course, a samurai from 400 years ago, how would that be, him integrating into the modern world? How would they deal with that? Well, how they deal with that is they send him to high school. Which of course is absolutely ridiculous. You would not be able to just integrate someone into high school who comes from 400 years ago, especially not with the rapidity that they do within this series. Shirohane, who is his co-pilot in this series to control this robot, again, kind of serves no purpose. The relationship is slightly developed within the series, but doesn't really go much of anywhere except for the fact that she stops hating him, I suppose. That's about it. If anything, the most interesting relationship is the relationship Kenosuke ends up having with, I don't know why I keep calling her Shinosuke, just call her Yukina. The relationship Kenosuke has with Yukina's younger sister is actually super adorable. It's super cute, super adorable, and it was one of the most enjoyable things I saw within the series, which is funny considering this is a mecha combat fighting series. Yet the most enjoyable part is just watching a 15-year-old boy have fun with a young child and just be pleasant with her. But so that's the basic foundation. Is he comes out and they are fighting against what are known as Oni, ogres, basically aliens, and these aliens are here and they control their own gigantic robots and have sort of grunt unmanned other robots that they send down. And the entire concept is they are trying to figure out what happened to their advanced search party that they sent 400 years ago. Figure out what happened, because they are trying to find something known as the pivot stone. And after the first season, that's pretty much where you're at. There's no real explanation of anything. Who are these people? They obviously come from another planet, but why? They're just an advanced unit. What are they trying to do? What is the pivot stone? What is the purpose of the entire thing? It's not explained. Even, unfortunately, Kenosuke's background, there is, some mystery thrown in there. Is he really a samurai? His memory's been altered. Who was the princess that he was sworn to protect? How was she able to link him to the robot? There are some mysteries that are thrown into the series, but unfortunately, they're never fully explained, which I suppose you can accept. I mean, there is a season 2, maybe it will explain there. But when the entire season, is just kind of throwing these informations at you and nothing is ever explained, and the only kind of thing to do to distract you is throw in some really cool mecha action, I will say that the animation is pretty darn well done. It's very fluid. The combat manages to be pretty interesting, even in the mecha combats. The blade fighting scenes and Kenosuke fighting himself with just his sword is actually really well done. I did enjoy it. The side characters of the story kind of serve no purpose, though. Everyone around him is a kid, and again, this is kind of to go back to what I said before. Japanese studios seem to really have this obsession with main characters being in high school and main characters being surrounded by kids, to the point where you have this United Nations compound, which is all run by adults, and yet the main robot, this relic of the aliens that is being utilized by Kenosuke and Yukina, is being run by two 15-year-olds, and the two other units are being run by kids also, who all go to the school. Why? Why is the main military fighting force of the United Nations 6 15-year-olds, or at least 3 15-year-olds, and it's possible that 2 of them are a little bit older. I'm not too sure. One of the girls seems to be this rich girl from France, and her co-pilot is her butler. There's some real nonsense put in, and this again happens so much in anime, where they take really interesting concepts and ruin it by just making characters be too young and then act nothing like a 15-year-old. This might be acceptable, sure, if the time period was the samurai era and these people were 15, 16 years old. I'd still expect them to act a bit kiddish, but at the same time, 15, 16 back in the samurai era was very, very different. In modern day times, especially United Nations, would never be allowed to use 15-year-olds as soldiers. It's just not accepted. It's not allowed. You cannot have a modern setting and then have these idiocies that keep happening. I mean, even just the way it's all portrayed in the media, the entire high school looks at them like they're these cool heroes. It's ridiculous. It simply would not and would never be allowed. The pilots would be at least 18 years old, which is the legal age. You would not even be able to enter the army before the age of 18. Usually, sometimes you can go in at 16, but even then, it doesn't matter how much of a genius you are, you're not allowed to just suddenly join the army when you're a small child. And most of them would be even younger, because some of the kids are saying that before they even went to the UN, they were already in the military. So they would have started when they were, 11, 12, 13 years old? It makes no sense whatsoever, and it pulls away from the seriousness of what's happening around them by having children going to high school. And that, unfortunately, is one of the biggest issues of this. I mean, in the final 2 episodes, so episode 12 and 13 of season 1, episode 12 is literally suddenly just the kids doing training exercises. That's the entire episode. The second to last episode is just them training. The last episode is a festival. That's how they ended the series. And then there's an interesting plot twist at the end. If you could call it a plot twist, it's just an interesting moment for 5 seconds that you're just like, I wonder what that means. That's it. So, I don't know, people. I'm very disappointed, because I really do enjoy the action in this in this season, but there's so much wasted time and effort. The side characters and the exposition is just really kind of erratic, and they don't know what they're doing. Nothing is explained, and not in a way that lends mystery or kind of makes you want to know. It just makes you go, what the hell is happening? Why are people like this? Where is this going to go? What's the purpose, basically? So I'd still recommend it if you want a quick anime to kind of go through. I will push myself to finish season 2 just because I want to see if at least some questions are answered, and maybe by the end of season 2 I'll appreciate the series a lot more. But definitely as a beginning, it doesn't seem to know where it wants to go. And I am just quite frankly really tired of little kids. And this is not to say I don't enjoy anime with children as the main characters. This is perfectly acceptable. Two of my favorite anime series are Avatar: The Last Airbender, which everyone can appreciate, and Hunter x Hunter, which is one of the most famous anime series in the world. And the reason why I enjoy the characters in those ones who are even younger, I mean, Aang is, I believe, 11 or 12. Gon and Killua in the Hunter x Hunter series are 12 years old, I believe, as well. But it is perfectly acceptable because the world they live in, the seriousness applies to them. There are just really big issues. I mean, Hunter x Hunter is much more serious than Avatar, but you know they're 12. You always know they're 12. And when they don't act at their age, you understand why they don't act their age. You understand the world they grew up in. You understand who they are. And sometimes you understand that they're just kind of different than other people. But within the modern day settings, it just doesn't make sense. And it simply doesn't make sense from legal ways. You always have to sort of, when a show is forcing you to abandon reason and logic, there has to be some kind of foundation to why. And that can work in fantasy settings. It can even work sometimes in sci-fi settings. But in general, if you're going to have a modern day setting and then just abandon the logic that you know exists within the world, it has to make sense. And it just doesn't in this series, unfortunately. So again, I would check it out. I'm going to say a little bit of spoilers now. So if you don't want to hear some spoilers, just move along. I will just focus on the fact that there is a, how could I say it? There is a really interesting kind of subplot running along this story, which has to do with Yukina's father, which I'm actually really excited to know more about. I really hope they do explore it more in season 2, because Yukina's father seems to be someone who has much more of a grasp and is much more involved. Obviously, Yukina is somehow involved, maybe bloodline-wise, to the Ueshibas, but again, in the final episode, you see a woman who looks precisely like the princess, which leads more to the understanding that perhaps his princess was actually one of these Ephidorgs, the aliens. She manipulated his memory, played upon it. It's possible it was the princess died and it was actually that man who was holding her, and he just like warped his memory and gave him permission through his blood to be able to run the robot. And Yukina, his Ueshiba bloodline, I don't really know. But I want to know how the father's involved in this. Has he become an Ephidorg? Was he an Ephidorg? Did he become bonded with a robot? What happened? Because we only see that one short episode where it showed off. Unfortunately, again, wasted potential because, you know, multiple episodes were wasted on just nothing happening. The festival, the training, it's really not cool. I mean, you take anime such as My Hero Academia, who had multiple episodes where they were going through training programs, and yet the story was developed and characters were developed in such a larger way than this series manages to do, which we'd think would be better at it because it's a more serious setting, but yet doesn't do it. So yeah, a little bit depressed, honestly. I'm freaking tired. Tired of all these animes bringing up my hopes, and then, but who knows? Again, I'll check out season 2. Let me know what you think down below in the comment section. Like, subscribe, check out the website at geeksandbarbas.com, and don't spoil anything for season 2 for me. But if you know that there is a little bit more hope once I get to season 2, you can at least give me a thumbs up down below and just be like, just hold on, and I will be thankful. Peace.